The Officers Club at Naval Special Warfare Center Coronado had seen its share of historic moments. Graduations, promotions, the quiet celebrations of men who'd earned the right to wear the trident. But nothing like this. Nothing that made the air feel thick enough to cut with a K-bar. 250 of America's most elite warriors packed the room. SEALs, Delta Force operators, Army Rangers, Green Berets, men who'd bled in mountains and deserts and jungles and city streets from Mogadishu to Ramadi to the Hindu Kush. Men who spoke in a language of shared sacrifice that civilians would never understand. And every single one of them was watching her. Lieutenant Kara Thorne stood near the bar, her dress uniform crisp and perfect, the gold seal trident gleaming on her chest. 27 years old, 5'3", 127 pounds soaking wet, the smallest SEAL in the history of naval special warfare, and the first woman ever assigned to an operational team. She kept her face neutral, her posture relaxed, the way her grandfather had taught her. Never let them see the fear, never let them see the doubt. Just stand there like you belong, and eventually your body will believe it. But she could feel their eyes, could hear the whispers that weren't quite whispers, could sense the hostility radiating off some of them like heat shimmer off desert sand. Across the room, Colonel Declan Thorne watched his granddaughter with the same ice-blue eyes that had once tracked targets across Korean hillsides. 92 years old, but still straight-backed as a flagpole. Still sharp enough to count the number of men in this room who wanted his granddaughter to fail. All of them, he figured, give or take a handful. The ceremony that afternoon had been professional, polished. Rear Admiral Hayes had said all the right words about historic moments in progress and the evolution of special operations. Class 358 had graduated, 23 men who'd survived 6 months of the most brutal training the military could devise, and one woman. Kira had stood there on the parade ground feeling the weight of history and expectation and judgment pressing down on her shoulders like a rucksack full of rocks. She'd earned every bit of that trident, top of her class in marksmanship, top 5 in navigation and underwater operations. She'd carried the boats, endured Hell Week, done everything the men had done, but she could see it in their faces, in the way some of them wouldn't meet her eyes, in the way others stared too long, looking for weakness, waiting for proof that this was all a mistake. Her father would have understood. Master Chief Garrett Thorne, call sign Phantom, had spent 15 years in the teams before an Afghan hillside had claimed him in 2011. Kira had been 14, old enough to understand that her father was never coming home, old enough to remember his last words to her before that final deployment. You're better than most of the men I serve with Firefly. Don't ever let anyone tell you different. She'd carried those words through buds like a talisman, through the cold and the pain and the instructors who'd pushed her twice as hard as anyone else, looking for the breaking point that never came. Because Declan Thorne didn't raise quitters. And Garrett Thorne's daughter sure as hell wasn't going to be the first. The club was getting louder now. The official ceremony was over, and alcohol was doing what alcohol always did, loosening tongues and lowering inhibitions. Kira nursed a beer. She wasn't really drinking, staying close to her grandfather, trying to look relaxed, while every nerve in her body stayed coiled and ready. They're waiting for you to fail, Declan said quietly. His voice was gravel and whiskey worn smooth by 9 decades of use. Watching for any sign of weakness. I know Grandpa. Some of them are good men who just can't see past their prejudices yet. Others, he trailed off his eyes, tracking across the room. Others are going to be in a problem. Kira followed his gaze and found Lieutenant Commander Bryce Hawkins holding court near the pool table. 6'3", 215 pounds of coiled muscle and hard-earned arrogance. 13 years in the teams, 6 combat deployments. The kind of man other men instinctively followed. Also the kind of man who made no secret of his opinions about women in special operations. She'd heard the comments during training. Not from the instructors, they'd been professional, if not always warm, but from some of the other candidates. From senior SEALs who'd visit the training center and shake their heads at what the Navy was becoming. Political correctness is going to get people killed. She might pass training, but wait until the shooting starts. No way she can carry a wounded teammate. What happens when someone dies because she's not strong enough? Kira had swallowed every comment, every doubt, every sidelong glance, had channeled it all into fuel, into determination, into cold, focused rage that she'd hidden behind a professional mask and used to push through every evolution, every test, every moment when her body screamed at her to quit. And she'd made it. Against odds that would have broken most people. But standing here now in this room full of warriors who saw her as an intruder, she understood that Bud's had just been the first battle. Hawkins was getting louder. His face was flushed, his movements loose. How many drinks was he into? 4 or 5, his voice carried across the room. I'm just saying, standards are standards for a reason. You start making exceptions, you put everyone at risk. One of the other SEALs, younger, less certain, tried to lower his voice. She passed the same training we all did, Reaper. Did she? Hawkins leaned against the pool table, his eyes cutting across the room to where Kira stood. Or did they adjust things just enough? Make things just a little easier? You think the admirals wanted to explain why their diversity experiment failed? Kira felt her jaw tighten, felt Declan's hand on her arm, gentle but firm. Let it go, he murmured. Man's drunk and looking for a fight. Don't give him one. I'm not afraid of him. I know you're not. That's not the point. Declan's fingers tightened slightly. You win this war by being better than them, by doing the job so well they can't find fault, not by knocking some drunk SEAL on his ass in front of his buddies. Kira took a breath. Let it out slowly. Her grandfather was right. He was always right. 74 years of military service, from Korea to Cold War, operations in the Balkans, to consulting work that had brought him out of retirement more than once. The man had forgotten more about tactical thinking than most people would ever learn. But knowing he was right didn't make it easier to stand there while Hawkins' voice got louder and his comments got sharper. A SEAL that week, Hawkins was saying, now his words starting to slur at the edges. What's next? Sending cheerleaders to Fallujah. Maybe we should give out participation trophies for Hell Week. Some of the men around him laughed. Others looked uncomfortable. A few glanced toward Kira, trying to gauge her reaction. She kept her face neutral, took a small sip of her beer, looked at Hawkins with the same mild interest she might give a training briefing. It made him angrier. You know what Phantom Thorn would say about this? Hawkins pushed off from the pool table, swaying slightly. You know what a real SEAL would think about his daughter playing dress-up? The room got quieter. The comment had crossed a line and everyone knew it. You could question policy. You could gripe about standards and politics and the way the Navy was changing. But you didn't disrespect the dead. You didn't invoke the name of a fallen brother to score points in a pissing contest. Kira felt something cold settle into her chest, felt her breathing slow, and her vision sharpen. The same thing that happened before a shot, before contact, when everything narrowed down to target and task and the absolute clarity of purpose. Kira, Declan's voice was barely a whisper, not a command, just a reminder that she had a choice. She set down her beer, turned to face Hawkins fully, kept her voice level and professional. Commander Hawkins, I think you've had enough to drink. Maybe you should call it a night. The room went dead silent. Hawkins stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed. It wasn't a nice sound. Oh, she speaks, and she's giving me orders now. He took a step forward, then another. The crowd parted, giving him space, giving them both space. Let me tell you something, Lieutenant. Your daddy was a real SEAL. Phantom knew what it took to operate at this level. He earned his trident in blood and pain and sacrifice. Another step closer. Kira didn't back up, didn't move at all, just stood there calm and centered while Hawkins loomed over her. The size difference was absurd. He outweighed her by nearly 100 pounds, topped her by more than a foot. You, Hawkins' voice dropped lower, meaner. You're a political statement, a diversity checkbox, and everyone in this room knows it. I passed the same training you did, Kira said quietly. Same standards, same evolution. I earned this. She tapped the trident on her chest, just like everyone else here. Bullshit. Hawkins was close enough now that she could smell the whiskey on his breath. They wanted you to pass, so they made sure you passed, and now you're going to get assigned to an operational team, and some good man is going to die, because you're not strong enough to do the job. Step back, Commander. Or what? Hawkins spread his arms wide, playing to the crowd. You going to show everyone how tough you are. Kira didn't answer, just stood there breathing slowly, watching him, calculating. the way Declan had taught her, the way her father had reinforced. Never react emotionally. Never let anger make your decisions. Just assess, plan, wait for the right moment. Hawkins turned to address the room, his back partially to Kira now. This is what the teams are becoming. Political correctness over. He stopped mid-sentence, turned back to face her, and something shifted in his expression. The drunk belligerence faded for just a second, replaced by something uglier, something personal. Your father died because someone on his team wasn't strong enough. Hawkins said, his voice quiet enough that only the people nearby could hear. Taliban ambush in the Korangal. Someone missed a sign. Someone didn't do their job. And Phantom paid the price. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to barely a whisper. Hope it's not genetic. Kira's world narrowed down to tunnel vision, to the cold rage that lives somewhere deep in her chest, buried under layers of discipline and training and professional behavior. The rage she'd been managing since she was 14 years old and a Navy chaplain had shown up at their door with the words that split her life into before and after. She didn't see Hawkins' hand move, didn't consciously process the way his shoulder telegraphed the incoming shove. But her body knew, her training knew. And when his hand came up, whether to shove her or strike her, she'd never be quite sure she wasn't there anymore. Sidestep, simple, efficient. The way Declan had taught her when she was 10 years old, using a broom handle in the backyard to teach her about angles and leverage and how to make size irrelevant. Never be where the enemy expects you to be, Firefly. Her left hand deflected Hawkins' arm. Not a block that would have required strength she didn't have. Just a redirect. Send his momentum where she wanted it. Off balance. Overextended. Her right fist drove into his liver with every ounce of power she could generate from her legs, her hips, her core. The sweet spot. The place where pain lived. Where even the toughest men crumpled if you hit it right. Hawkins' eyes went wide. His mouth opened in a silent gasp. And before he could recover, before his body could process what was happening, Kira's left hook came up in a tight arc and connected with his jaw. Not the chin, not the cheekbone. The hinge of the jaw where bone met bone, where the mandibular nerve ran close to the surface. The place Declan had taught her to target if she ever needed to end a fight quickly. Precision beats power and timing beats speed. Hawkins dropped like a marionette with cut strings. 215 pounds of elite warrior hitting the floor hard enough to rattle glasses on the bar. Not unconscious, his eyes were still open, still aware, but the lights were definitely flickering. His body was doing that involuntary twitching thing that happens when the brain gets rattled hard enough. For exactly 5 seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. 250 Special Forces operators stood frozen, trying to process what they'd just witnessed. Then the room exploded. Some men rushed forward. Others held them back. Voices rose in anger and shock, and from a few something that might have been respect. Kira stood over Hawkins, her hands still loosely formed into fists, her breathing steady and controlled. She looked down at the man who'd questioned her strength, who'd invoked her father's name as a weapon, who'd moved to strike her first. He moved to hit me, she said, her voice cutting through the chaos with absolute clarity. I defended myself. She turned slowly, making the eye contact with the men closest to her. Let them see that she wasn't shaking, wasn't scared, wasn't backing down. Sir, she added, looking at no one in particular, looking at all of them. Declan stood exactly where he'd been before, his expression unchanged. But when Kira glanced his way, she saw the tiniest hint of a smile at the corner of his weathered face. The kind of smile that said he'd taught her that exact combination and was pleased to see she'd remembered it. A Navy corpsman pushed through the crowd, kneeling beside Hawkins. The SEAL commander was sitting up now, shaking his head, looking confused and angry and humiliated. His jaw was already starting to swell. Step aside, make room. The corpsman's voice was professional, automatic. Commander Hawkins, can you tell me where you are? Hawkins mumbled something that might have been the right answer. Might not have been. His eyes found Kira, and the look in them promised that this wasn't over. Not even close. The crowd parted again, and Rear Admiral Hayes appeared, his face the color of old brick. Behind him came his aide, looking like a man who'd just watched his career prospects evaporate. Lieutenant Thorne, Hayes' voice could have frozen fire. My office, now. Yes, sir. Colonel Thorne, you're coming too. Declan nodded once, fell into step beside his granddaughter as they followed the Admiral out of the club. Behind them, the room erupted into 100 different conversations, all happening at once. By tomorrow morning, every SEAL on every team would know what happened. By tomorrow afternoon, the story would have spread to Delta and the Rangers and probably half the Special Operations community. The girl who knocked out Reaper Hawkins in front of 250 witnesses. The walk to the Admiral's office took 3 minutes. It felt like 3 hours. Hayes didn't say a word, just walked with the kind of rigid posture that said he was working very hard to control his anger. His aides scurried ahead to unlock the office, flipping on lights, trying to stay invisible. The office was exactly what you'd expect. American flag in the corner, unit photos on the walls, commendations in neat frames, a desk that had probably seen 3 or 4 admirals before Hayes. The accumulated weight of naval special warfare history pressing down on everything. Hayes closed the door, turned to face Kira, and when he spoke, his voice was quiet, which somehow made it worse. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" "I defended myself, sir. Commander Hawkins moved to strike me. I responded with appropriate force to neutralize the threat." "Appropriate force," Hayes's voice rose slightly. "You knocked out a superior officer in front of half the Special Operations community. He assaulted me first, sir. He was drunk. That doesn't give him the right to hit me." Kira kept her voice level, respectful, but firm. "Sir." Hayes stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned to Declan. "Colonel Thorne, do you have anything to add to this?" Declan studied the Admiral with those ice-blue eyes that had seen too much history. "Admiral, my granddaughter just defended herself against a man who outweighed her by 90 pounds and had already demonstrated hostile intent. She used minimal necessary force and stopped immediately when the threat was neutralized." He paused. "That's textbook self-defense. It's also exactly what we trained her to do." "This isn't about the technical definition of self-defense," Hayes snapped. "This is about optics. This is about the fact that I have 250 witnesses who just watched my historic first female SEAL knock out one of my most experienced team leaders." "Perhaps," Declan said quietly, "your most experienced team leader shouldn't have been drunk and aggressive toward a fellow officer." Hayes's jaw worked like he was chewing steel. He turned back to Kira, and for a moment she saw genuine conflict in his eyes. This was a man caught between what he believed was right and what he knew was politically survivable. "I could end your career right now," he said finally. "One phone call, an Article 32 hearing for assaulting a superior officer. You'd be gone before the end of the month." Kira said nothing, just stood there at attention waiting. "Sir," Declan started, but Hayes held up a hand. "However." The Admiral moved behind his desk, sank into his chair like a man carrying a heavy burden. "I have 50 witnesses who will testify that Hawkins initiated physical contact. I have security footage that will probably show the same thing. And I have a personnel file that shows you graduated top of your class in hand-to-hand combat." He steepled his fingers, staring at Kira over them. "I also have a problem." The office got very quiet. "You've made enemies tonight, Lieutenant. Powerful ones. Men who were already skeptical about women in the teams. Men who now have proof in their minds that female operators are a liability, that they can't be trusted to maintain unit cohesion, that they'll lash out at the first sign of hazing." "That's not what happens, sir," Kira said quietly. "I know that. You know that. Hell, probably half the men in that room know that. But it doesn't matter." Hayes leaned back in his chair. "Perception is reality in this business. And the perception right now is that you're a problem waiting to happen. So what are you saying, sir, that I should have stood there and let him hit me?" "I'm saying you've put me in an impossible position." Hayes was quiet for a moment. Then, "I could reassign you to a training billet, keep you away from operational teams until this blows over. Sir." "Or," Hayes cut her off, "you could prove that tonight was an aberration, that you're not a loose cannon, that you belong in the teams not because of politics or diversity initiatives, but because you're a professional operator who can complete any mission assigned to her." Kira felt her pulse quicken. "Sir," Hayes opened a drawer in his desk, pulled out a red folder with classification markings that made Kira's security clearance look like a library card. He set it on the desk but didn't open it. "Tomorrow morning, 0600, SGIF briefing." His eyes moved from Kira to Declan and back. Both of you, classified mission, high priority, very high risk. What kind of mission? Kira asked. The kind that needs a female operator who can handle herself in extremely hostile conditions. Hayes's expression didn't change. The kind that, if successful, would prove beyond any doubt that you earned your place in the teams. And if I refuse, then I accept your resignation effective immediately, and we chalk tonight up to a training accident that showed you weren't ready for the operational demands of special warfare. Hayes's voice was flat, professional, the voice of a man who'd made hard calls before and would make them again. Your choice, Lieutenant. Kira looked at her grandfather. Declan's face was unreadable, but she could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. The way he was weighing risks and rewards, running scenarios the way he'd been doing for 9 decades. Finally, he gave her the smallest nod. The decision was hers. She turned back to Hayes. I'll be there, sir. 0600. Good. Hayes stood up, signaling the meeting was over. Dismissed. And Lieutenant, I suggest you get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a very long day. Kira and Declan left the office and walked in silence across the base. The night air was cool, carrying the salt smell of the Pacific. Somewhere in the distance, a training class was running night ops, their voices carrying across the water. You know it's a trap, Declan said finally. I know. They're either going to give you something impossible to prove you can't cut it, or they're going to give you something that should be impossible and hope you succeed. I know that too, Grandpa. They reached the parking lot. Declan's truck, a ancient Ford Ranger that had probably seen action in 3 different wars, sat waiting. He unlocked it but didn't get in, just stood there looking at his granddaughter in the sodium lights. Your father was on a mission when he died, Declan said quietly. Bad intelligence, wrong place, wrong time. But he went anyway because that was the job. Because someone had to. I'm not afraid. You should be. Fear keeps you sharp, keeps you alive. Declan's hand found her shoulder squeeze once. But you're Thorn through and through. Fear never stopped us from doing what needed to be done. Kira looked at her grandfather. 92 years old. Should have been in a retirement home somewhere boring nurses with war stories. Instead, he was standing in a parking lot at midnight, preparing for one more mission with his granddaughter. You don't have to come tomorrow, she said. Whatever this is, it's my fight. Declan's laugh was dry as desert sand. Firefly, I've been fighting since before your father was born. I'm not stopping now. He climbed into the truck, started the engine. 0600, I'll pick you up at 0530. Gives us time for coffee. Grandpa, he looked at her. Thank you for everything. Declan was quiet for a moment. Then you earned that trident, Kira. Anyone says different is a fool or a liar. Probably both. He put the truck in gear. Now get some rest. Tomorrow we find out just how badly they want to break you. The truck pulled away, leaving Kira standing alone in the parking lot. She looked up at the stars, the same stars her father had looked at from foreign deserts and mountains. The same stars Declan had navigated by in Korea when GPS was science fiction. Somewhere across the base in a hospital room, or his quarters, Bryce Hawkins was probably still trying to figure out how a woman half his size had put him on the floor. She hoped his jaw hurt, hoped it hurt like hell. But tomorrow none of that would matter. Tomorrow she'd walk into a briefing that was either her salvation or her execution. Tomorrow she'd prove she belonged, or she'd prove all the doubters right. She walked back to her quarters, her mind already running scenarios, already preparing for whatever impossible mission Hayes had waiting. Sleep would be hard to come by, but SEALs learn to operate on no sleep, learn to push through exhaustion and pain and doubt. That's what made them SEALs. That's what made her one of them, whether they liked it or not. In a room on the other side of the base, video footage from the Officers Club was already spreading across secure military networks. By morning, 50 different versions of the story would be circulating. The girl who'd knocked out Reaper Hawkins, the diversity hire who'd gotten lucky, the political statement who'd shown her true colors. Let them talk, Kira thought as she finally drifted toward sleep. Let them doubt and whisper and judge. Tomorrow she'd show them what Garrett Thorne's daughter was really capable of. Tomorrow the real test would begin. The skiff's sensitive compartmented information facility sat in the basement of Building 627 behind three locked doors and enough security to protect nuclear launch codes. Kira had been inside exactly twice before, both times during her final phase of training. The room always felt like a tomb. No windows, no natural light, just the cold hum of climate control and the weight of secrets that could start or end wars. She arrived at 0545, Declan beside her, both of them carrying coffee in paper cups that would be confiscated before they entered. Standard procedure: no outside materials in a skiff, nothing that could contain recording devices or foreign substances or anything else that might compromise operational security. A Marine guard checked their credentials 3 times before letting them through the first door. Then a second guard. Then a biometric scanner that read palm prints and retinas and probably DNA for all Kira knew. By the time they reached the briefing room, she felt like she'd infiltrated a foreign military installation. The room was larger than she'd expected. 20 chairs arranged in rows facing a projection screen, most of them empty, but 3 were occupied. Rear Admiral Hayes sat at the front, his uniform pressed sharp enough to draw blood. Next to him was a man Kira didn't recognize, late 40s expensive suit that screamed government contractor or intelligence services, the kind of face that looked pleasant and forgettable until you noticed his eyes. They were a predator's eyes, calculating, cold. And in the back row, sitting apart from everyone else, was Bryce Hawkins. His jaw was swollen purple and yellow. A butterfly bandage held together a small cut near his temple. He looked like he'd gone 3 rounds with a heavyweight boxer and lost decisively. When Kira entered, his eyes tracked her with the focus of a targeting laser. She didn't look away, didn't apologize with her expression, just nodded once, a professional acknowledgement between operators, and took a seat in the second row. Declan settled beside her, his weathered hands folded calmly in his lap, looking like a man who'd sat through 1,000 briefings and wasn't impressed by any of them. Hayes stood up, moved to the front of the room. "Now that we're all here, let's begin." He gestured to the man in the suit. "This is CIA Officer Sterling Blackwood. He'll be briefing you on the operational parameters." Blackwood stood with the smooth confidence of someone who'd given presentations to senators and presidents. He clicked a remote, and the projection screen came to life with a photograph of a man in his early 50s. Silver hair, hard-faced eyes that had seen violence and dealt it back. "Alexei Volkov," Blackwood said, "former Spetsnaz Alpha Group, served with distinction during the Second Chechen War, the Beslan School siege in 2004, and multiple classified operations throughout the former Soviet sphere. Left Russian military service in 2009 under circumstances that remain unclear. Currently operates as an international arms dealer working out of Montenegro." The screen changed. Satellite imagery of a compound overlooking water, high walls, multiple structures, security that looked professional and thorough. Volkov's primary residence and base of operations, Kotor, Montenegro, Bay of Kotor, specifically one of the most secure natural harbors in the Mediterranean. Blackwood let that sink in. For the past 6 years, Volkov has been brokering deals between former Soviet states and various interested parties. Weapons, technology, information. He's connected, careful, and very good at what he does. Another image. This one made Kira's blood run cold. A metal container, roughly the size of a briefcase, marked with radiation warnings in Cyrillic. 3 weeks ago, we received intelligence that Volkov has acquired 20 kilograms of weapons-grade plutonium, enough to build multiple nuclear devices. Our sources indicate he's arranged a sale to a terrorist cell with ties to the group that attempted the New York subway bombing in 2023. The room got very quiet. "The transaction is scheduled to take place in 96 hours. Montenegro, exact location unknown, but we believe somewhere in or near Volkov's compound." Blackwood's voice never changed tone. He could have been describing stock prices. "If that plutonium reaches its intended buyers, we're looking at the very real possibility of a nuclear attack on American soil within 6 months." Hayes took over. "This is a joint CIA shock operation. Primary objective, locate and secure the plutonium. Secondary objective, gather intelligence on Volkov's network and supply chain. Tertiary objective, capture or eliminate Volkov himself." Blackwood clicked to another image. This one showed women, 4 of them. Young, attractive, hard-looking, in a way that said they knew how to handle themselves. Volkov has a specific security protocol. His close protection team consists exclusively of female operators, all of them former military or intelligence services from various countries, all of them highly trained in combat. He trusts women more than men apparently, a psychological quirk stemming from the Beslan siege where his entire male squad was killed or captured. The screen changed again. An underground arena, crowds, fighters in a cage. Entry point is through the Balkan underground fight circuit. Volkov scouts for talent there. Win a high-profile fight and you get noticed. Get noticed and you get an offer. It's how he's recruited his last 3 bodyguards. Kira felt the pieces clicking into place, felt the trap closing around her with crystal clarity. There's a fight scheduled in Budva, Montenegro in 48 hours, Blackwood continued. Winner takes 75,000 euros. More importantly, Volkov's scouts will be in attendance. We need an operator who can win that fight, get hired into Volkov's organization, and gather intelligence on the plutonium location. Hayes looked directly at Kira. Lieutenant Thorne fits the profile. Age, appearance, demonstrated combat capability. She's our best option for infiltration. What about exfiltration? Declan's voice cut through the briefing like a knife. You're asking her to walk into a hostile foreign compound with no backup and no clear extraction plan. She'll have backup, Blackwood said. Handler will maintain overwatch from a distance. Tactical advisor will coordinate intelligence from a safe location. If things go wrong, we can have a quick reaction force on site within 45 minutes. 45 minutes is a lifetime in a firefight, Declan said flatly. You know that, I know that. Everyone in this room knows that. It's the best we can do given the operational constraints, Hayes said. Montenegro isn't a war zone. We can't exactly roll in with a platoon of SEALs without causing an international incident. Kira raised her hand slightly. All eyes turned to her. Who's the handler? Hayes' expression went carefully neutral. Lieutenant Commander Hawkins has operational experience in Eastern Europe. 3 years conducting surveillance and direct action missions in the Balkans during his time with DevGru. He speaks Russian and Serbian. He knows the territory. Behind her, Kira heard Hawkins shift in his seat. She didn't turn around, just processed the information with the cold logic her grandfather had drilled into her. They were pairing her with the man she'd knocked out 12 hours ago, the man who'd publicly questioned her ability to operate at this level. Either Hayes was testing them both or someone wanted this mission to fail spectacularly. And the tactical advisor, Kira asked. Colonel Thorne has volunteered his services, Hayes said. His experience operating in the Balkans during the Cold War era gives him unique insight into the region. The CIA has agreed to his participation in a consulting capacity. Declan nodded once. Message received. He'd be there watching coordinating. Not in the field, he was 92, not suicidal, but close enough to provide guidance. Kira looked at the projection screen at Volkov's hard face at the compound that would either prove her worth or become her tomb. What's the timeline? 18 hours to prepare, Blackwood said. We have a C-17 on standby that will get you to Ramstein Air Base in Germany. From there, civilian transport to Montenegro. You'll have time to establish your cover identity, review operational parameters, and prepare for the fight. Cover identity. Eva Volkova, Russian-American mixed martial arts fighter. Credible background, documented fight history in smaller circuits. Clean enough to pass Volkov's initial screening, while Blackwood clicked to a new slide showing passport visa fight records. Your legend has been in place for 6 months. We've been planning for this contingency. Of course they had. The CIA didn't do anything without layers of preparation and backup plans. Kira wondered how long they'd been waiting for the right female operator to use. What about communication? Hawkins spoke for the first time, his voice rough around the edges. His jaw must hurt like hell. If she's inside the compound, how does she pass intelligence? Dead drops initially, Blackwood said. Once she's established trust, we can work on more sophisticated methods. But the first 48 hours assume all communications are compromised. Lieutenant Thorne will be operating blind. Declan's hand found Kira's knee squeezed once. A warning, a reminder. This was even worse than it looked. One more thing, Blackwood said, and something in his tone made Kira's instincts scream. Alexei Volkov was a CIA asset from 2009 to 2012. He provided valuable intelligence on Russian military operations, Chechen rebel networks, and various terrorist organizations operating in the region. The room went absolutely still. In August 2011, Volkov reported intelligence on a Taliban operation in Afghanistan. Specifically, he provided information about a high-value target, a Taliban commander named Rashid Bahar. Acting on that intelligence, SEAL Team 6 conducted a raid in the Korangal Valley. Kira's world started to tilt. The raid was an ambush. The Taliban knew we were coming. 5 SEALs were killed in action. Blackwood's eyes found Kira's. One of them was Master Chief Garrett Thorne, your father. The briefing room disappeared. Kira was 14 again, standing in the living room of their house in Virginia Beach, watching her mother's face crumble as the chaplain said words that didn't make sense. KIA, hostile fire, honorable service. Her father was coming home in a flag-draped coffin, and nothing would ever be the same. We've never been able to definitively prove whether Volkov betrayed the operation or if the intelligence was compromised through other channels. Blackwood continued. But given his subsequent departure from CIA service and transition to arms dealing, there are strong suspicions. Kira's voice came out flat. Dead. You're sending me to infiltrate the man who might have killed my father. We're sending you to complete a mission, Hayes said. Whatever personal feelings you have about Volkov need to stay locked down. The plutonium is the objective. Everything else is secondary. Like hell it is, Hawkins said. Kira turned to look at him surprised. His face was hard angry. Phantom Thorne was my mentor, taught me half of what I know about being a SEAL. You're asking both of us to work with the man who might have sold him out. I'm ordering both of you to complete a mission that could save thousands of American lives. Hayes said, his voice like iron. Your personal feelings are noted and irrelevant. The plutonium is what matters. If you can't separate your emotions from the operational requirements, I'll find someone who can. Kira's mind was racing, processing, analyzing. Her father died because of bad intelligence. Volkov provided that intelligence. Volkov might have betrayed him deliberately, or the leak might have come from somewhere else in the intelligence chain. Either way, she was being asked to smile and fight and infiltrate the organization of a man who bore some responsibility for making her an orphan. I'll do it, she heard herself say. Declan's hand tightened on her knee. Kira, I'll do it, she repeated louder this time. She looked at Hayes, then at Blackwood. But I want full operational autonomy once I'm inside. No micromanaging. No second-guessing my decisions in the field. I assess the situation and act accordingly. Understood. Hayes and Blackwood exchanged glances. Some unspoken communication passed between them. Agreed, Hayes said finally. Once you're inside Volkov's compound, you're the on-scene commander for this operation. We'll provide support and intelligence, but tactical decisions are yours. Kira nodded once, looked at Hawkins. Can you work with me on this? Put aside whatever happened last night and focus on the mission. Hawkins stared at her for a long moment. His jaw worked like he was chewing something bitter. Finally, Phantom saved my life in Ramadi. I owed him everything. If there's a chance, even a small one, that Volkov sold him out, I want to know. He met her eyes. Yeah, I can work with you. Then we have an operation, Hayes said. 18 hours until wheels up. Use the time wisely. Blackwood will provide detailed briefing materials, cover documents, and operational protocols. Questions? Declan raised his hand. What's the extraction plan if everything goes to hell? Hawkins will maintain overwatch from a position 2 to 3 kilometers outside the compound, Blackwood said. If Lieutenant Thorne signals distress, he moves in for immediate tactical support. If that fails, we have a quick reaction force staged in Albania that can cross the border and extract within 45 minutes. And if Volkov discovers she's CIA before she can signal, Declan pressed. Blackwood's expression didn't change. Then Lieutenant Thorne uses her training to survive until we can reach her. This is a high-risk operation. We've done everything possible to minimize exposure, but there are no guarantees in this line of work. Translation. If things went bad, Kira might be on her own for long enough to die. She'd known that going in. Had known it the moment Hayes mentioned a classified mission. You didn't volunteer for special operations if you needed guarantees of survival. I'm in, she said again. Final. Committed. Then we're done here, Hayes said. Dismissed. Lieutenant Thorne, Commander Hawkins, you're to report to the quartermaster for equipment issue Then to the briefing annex for detailed operational planning. Colonel Thorne Blackwood will coordinate your position and communication protocols. Move out." The meeting broke up. Kira stood feeling the weight of what she'd just agreed to settle onto her shoulders like a rucksack full of rocks. Beside her, Declan rose slowly, his 92-year-old joints protesting. "Walk with me," he said quietly. They left the skiff, reclaimed their coffee cups from the guard station, and stepped out into morning sunlight that felt too bright after the tomb-like briefing room. Declan led her to a bench overlooking the Pacific, sat down with a grunt, and was quiet for a long moment. "Your father," he said finally, "died doing his job. He knew the risks, accepted them, would do it all again if given the choice." "I know, but that doesn't mean you have to accept everything they're feeding you in there." Declan turned to look at her with those ice blue eyes that missed nothing. "This operation stinks, Firefly. Too many coincidences, too many personal connections. They're either testing you or setting you up, and I'm not sure which is worse." "What choice do I have?" Kira asked. "Walk away now and I prove everyone right. Prove that women can't handle the pressure, that I'm a liability. Or you prove that you're smart enough to recognize a suicide mission when you see one. Is that what you think this is?" Declan was quiet, weighing his words. "I think the CIA has an agenda that might not align with your survival. I think they're using your father's death as leverage to ensure your commitment. And I think if something goes wrong, they'll classify the whole operation and deny you ever existed." Cheerful. Realistic. He looked out at the ocean. "But I also know you're going to do it anyway. Because you're Thorne through and through. Because walking away isn't in your DNA. So I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure you come back alive. You'll be in Montenegro. Safe house in the mountains above Kotor. Close enough to monitor, far enough to maintain operational security." He pulled something from his pocket. A small medal worn smooth with age. Korean War Service medal. "Your father carried this through 15 years of operations. I carried it through Korea. Now you carry it." Kira took the medal, felt the weight of 3 generations of service in her palm. "Grandpa?" "Don't get sentimental," Declan said gruffly. "It's just metal. But it's also a reminder that Thorns don't quit. We don't break. And we sure as hell don't let some Russian arms dealer or CIA bureaucrat dictate our fate." He stood up, bones creaking, and put a hand on her shoulder. "You're going to walk into that fight in Budva, and you're going to win. Then you're going to infiltrate Volkov's organization and find that plutonium. And somewhere in all of that, you're going to figure out the truth about what happened to your father." His grip tightened. "But you're going to do it smart. No heroes, no unnecessary risks. You get the intelligence, you get out, you let the professionals handle the cleanup. Understood?" "Yes, sir." "Good." He released her shoulder, started walking back toward the parking lot. "Now let's get you equipped and briefed. We have 16 hours left, and I plan to use every single one of them, making sure you're prepared for this." The next 16 hours were a blur of preparation and planning. Equipment issue gave her everything from underwear to encrypted communications devices. All of it carefully selected to match her cover identity as a mixed martial arts fighter. No military gear. Nothing that would raise suspicions during a security screening. She spent 4 hours in hand-to-hand combat training with instructors who tried their best to simulate the kind of brutal, no-rules fighting she'd face in Budva. They were good. She was better. Years of training with Declan refined by buds, honed by a burning need to prove herself. Another 4 hours studying Volkov's background, his known associates, his patterns of behavior. The man was smart, paranoid, professional. He'd survived the brutal politics of Russian military intelligence and carved out a profitable niche in one of the world's most dangerous businesses. He didn't make mistakes, which meant Kira couldn't either. Hawkins mostly stayed away during the preparation phase. They had one awkward conversation in the equipment room, surrounded by duffel bags and tactical gear, where he'd muttered something that might have been an apology. "Last night," he said, not quite meeting her eyes, "I was out of line. You were drunk and angry. That's not an excuse." He finally looked at her. "Phantom talked about you, his daughter. Said you were training harder than most SEALs he knew. Said you'd be better than him someday. He was biased. Maybe, but he wasn't stupid. Hawkins adjusted the strap on an equipment bag. I thought women in special operations was a political stunt. Thought they were lowering standards to make it happen. I was wrong. I knocked you out in front of 250 people, Kira said. That tends to change opinions. That wasn't what changed my mind. Hawkins looked at her directly now. It was watching you in that briefing. They told you the man who might have killed your father is your target, and you didn't flinch. Didn't hesitate, just accepted the mission and asked for operational autonomy. That's not politics. That's a professional operator. Kira didn't know what to say to that, settled for, can you do your job as my handler? Yes. Even though 24 hours ago you thought I was a liability. Especially because of that. Hawkins' voice was flat. I don't want to be right about you. I want you to succeed. I want to be proven wrong so completely that I spend the rest of my career eating crow. Understand? She nodded. It wasn't friendship, wasn't trust, not yet, but it was a start. The C-17 left Coronado at 1800 hours, screaming east into gathering darkness. Kira sat in a canvas seat surrounded by equipment and 3 other passengers she didn't know and didn't ask about. Hawkins sat across from her, reviewing operational maps on a tablet. Declan had already left on an earlier civilian flight, using his consulting credentials to enter Montenegro quietly. 8 hours to Ramstein, 2 hours on the ground for refueling and customs theater. Then civilian transport, a charter flight arranged by CIA front companies to Podgorica, Montenegro's capital. From there, a rental car for the drive to Budva. Kira tried to sleep. Failed. Her mind kept cycling through scenarios, running simulations of the fight, the infiltration, the dozen ways this could go catastrophically wrong. She thought about her father, about the last time she'd seen him standing in the kitchen of their house dress uniform, perfect, telling her he'd be back in 6 months. He'd been lying, had known he might not come back. That was part of the job. You said goodbye like it might be the last time, and you meant it, and you went anyway because the mission mattered more than individual survival. Now she was doing the same thing. Following in footsteps she'd been tracing her entire life. Somewhere over the Atlantic, Hawkins moved to sit next to her, handed her a protein bar that tasted like cardboard and chemicals. Eat, you'll need the calories. She ate because he was right, not because she was hungry. Volkov's organization, Hawkins said quietly, is professional. His security people know what they're doing. You won't be able to fake your way through. They'll test you, push you, look for any sign that you're not who you claim to be. I know. And if they find out you're CIA or worse Navy, they won't bother with interrogation. They'll just kill you and dump your body in the Adriatic. I know that too. Hawkins was quiet for a moment. Then, Phantom told me once that the hardest part of being a SEAL wasn't the physical stuff. It was the mental game, being able to compartmentalize, to lock away fear and doubt and anything else that might compromise the mission. He was right. Can you do that? Can you lock away the fact that this man might have killed your father and just focus on the plutonium? Kira turned to look at him. Can you buy some? I'm asking you. Then here's my answer. I'm going to infiltrate Volkov's organization. I'm going to find the plutonium. I'm going to gather intelligence on his network. And somewhere in all of that, I'm going to figure out the truth about August 2011. She held his gaze. If Volkov betrayed my father, I'll know. And when this is over, he'll face justice for it. But the mission comes first. Always. Hawkins studied her face for a long moment, then nodded satisfied. Good answer. He moved back to his original seat, leaving Kira alone with her thoughts and the steady drone of the C-17's engines. Outside the small window, dawn was breaking over Europe. Somewhere ahead, Montenegro waited, along with a fight she had to win, a man she had to deceive, and answers about her father's death that might destroy her if she found them. She touched the Korean War medal in her pocket, felt the worn edges, 3 generations of warriors, and she was the latest. The one who'd knocked out a SEAL commander in front of his peers. The one who'd volunteered for an impossible mission because walking away wasn't an option. Her father would have understood. Her grandfather definitely did. Now all she had to do was survive long enough to prove them right. The C-17 flew on into morning, carrying her toward Montenegro and whatever waited there. Kira closed her eyes, forced herself into the shallow combat sleep she'd learned during Bodesis. Rest when you can. because you never know when you'll get another chance. And in Montenegro, in 48 hours, she'd need to be sharper than she'd ever been in her life. The underground fight arena in Budva smelled like sweat and blood and desperation. 300 people packed into a converted warehouse near the port, the kind of crowd that came to watch violence and bet money they couldn't afford to lose. Cigarette smoke hung thick in the air. The concrete walls were stained with rust, and God knew what else. Kira stood in the makeshift locker room, really just a partition corner, with a folding chair and a cracked mirror, and wrapped her hands with the methodical precision Declan had taught her when she was 12 years old. Left hand first, between each finger, around the wrist 3 times, tight enough to support, loose enough to maintain circulation. Through the thin walls, she could hear the crowd roaring. The current fight was ending badly for someone. She didn't look up, just kept rapping, kept breathing, kept her mind focused on the task ahead. The door opened. A man with a scarred face and dead eyes looked her up and down like she was livestock. Eva Volkova. Da. She answered in Russian, letting her accent match her cover identity. Russian father, American mother, childhood split between Brooklyn and Moscow. You fight in 10 minutes. No rules. No referee. Fight until knockout or submission. You understand? I understand. He grunted and left. The door closed. Kira finished wrapping her hands and stood rolling her shoulders, feeling her body settle into that pre-combat state where everything sharpened and time seemed to slow down. She'd felt it before, in training, in the moments before difficult evolutions during buds, the place where fear transformed into focus. Somewhere in the crowd, Hawkins was watching. She couldn't see him, but she knew he was there. Hidden comms device in his ear, eyes on every exit, sniper rifle staged in a rental car 2 blocks away, just in case everything went catastrophically wrong. And in a safe house in the mountains above Kotor, Declan was monitoring satellite feeds and local communications, his 92-year-old mind still sharp as broken glass, still calculating angles and contingencies. The scarred man returned. Now. Kira followed him through a narrow corridor that opened into the main warehouse. The noise hit her like a physical force. 300 voices screaming in half a dozen languages, money changing hands, bookies shouting odds. The raw energy of people who'd come to watch 2 human beings try to destroy each other. The fighting area was a simple cage, 20 feet by 20 feet, chain link fence, concrete floor with dark stains that might have been paint and definitely weren't. No padding, no safety equipment, just space and violence. Her opponent was already inside. Natalia Morozov, the Siberian, 5'10", 180 pounds of muscle and meanness. 23 wins, 2 losses. Former Russian military rumored to have killed a man with her bare hands during a bar fight in Vladivostok. She looked at Kira with the kind of contempt that came from size advantage and experience. Looked at her like she was already broken. The scarred man opened the cage door. Kira stepped inside. The door clanged shut behind her. No going back now. No referee. No announcement. Just Natalia moving forward, hands up, footwork solid. Sistema style. Russian military hand-to-hand combat. Efficient. Brutal. Designed to end fights quickly. Kira circled left, keeping her distance, watching. Natalia followed patient, letting her opponent settle. Testing, the first 30 seconds were all about assessment, reading tells, looking for weaknesses. Then Natalia attacked. Fast. Faster than Kira expected for someone that size. A straight right that whistled past Kira's ear as she slipped left. A knee that would have shattered ribs if it connected. Kira backpedaled, got her guard up, absorbed a hook on her forearms that sent shockwaves through her bones. The crowd roared. They'd paid to see blood, and Natalia was happy to provide it. Kira kept moving, kept circling, let Natalia press forward, establishing rhythm, getting confident. In her ear, buried so deep that even a physical search wouldn't find it, Hawkins' voice was barely a whisper. She telegraphs the right hook, drops her shoulder half a second before she throws. Kira had already noticed, was counting on it, but confirmation helped. Natalia came in again, 1-2 combination to the head. Low kick to Kira's lead leg that connected hard enough to make her teeth rattle. Another low kick. Setting up the finish, targeting the same leg, trying to compromise Kira's mobility. Smart, professional, exactly what a trained fighter would do. Kira let her land 2 more leg kicks, let her think the strategy was working. Saw Natalia's confidence grow with each successful strike. Saw her start to load up for the big right hand that would end this. Round 1 ended when the makeshift timekeeper, some old man with a cowbell, signaled 60 seconds had passed. No stools, no cornermen, just both fighters standing in the cage, breathing hard, assessing damage. Kira's left leg throbbed. She'd have bruises tomorrow, maybe worse. But she'd learned what she needed to know. Natalia was good, strong, technical, but she followed patterns, and patterns could be exploited. The bell rang again. Round 2. Natalia came out aggressive, smelling blood. More leg kicks. Kira checked one, absorbed another, and saw the opening she'd been waiting for. Natalia's shoulder dipped, the telegraph for the big right hand. Kira moved inside the punch. Didn't try to block it, just wasn't there anymore. Declan's voice in her memory, never be where the enemy expects. Her left hook buried itself in Natalia's liver. The sweet spot, the place where pain lived, where even the toughest fighters crumpled if you hit it right. Kira put everything into that shot. Every hour of training, every doubt she'd swallowed, every man who'd said she didn't belong. Natalia's eyes went wide, her hands dropped involuntarily, and Kira's right cross came up in a tight arc and connected with her jaw. Not the chin, the hinge, where Declan had taught her, where precision mattered more than power. Natalia went down like someone had cut her strings, hit the concrete hard enough to bounce. Her eyes were open but vacant. The lights were on, but nobody was home. The crowd went absolutely silent for 3 full seconds, then exploded. Kira stood over her fallen opponent, hands still up, breathing hard but controlled, making sure Natalia wasn't getting back up, making sure this was really over. It was over. The scarred man entered the cage, checked Natalia's pulse, waved for medical assistance. He looked at Kira with something that might have been respect. Good fight. Kira just nodded, turned toward the cage door, and saw him. Alexei Volkov. She knew him from the briefing photos, but seeing him in person was different. 53 years old, but moving like someone 20 years younger. Silver hair cut military short. Hard face that had seen violence and dealt it back. Eyes that missed nothing. He was standing in the front row, maybe 15 feet from the cage, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Calculating. Interested. Dangerous. Their eyes met, held for a long moment, and Kira felt something cold settle into her stomach. Recognition. Not of her face, her cover was solid, but of something else. Some quality he'd seen before. He smiled, not friendly, not warm, just acknowledgement that he'd found something interesting. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Kira left the cage and pushed through to the locker room. Grabbed her bag, stripped off the hand wraps with fingers that wanted to shake, but didn't. She had maybe 10 minutes before someone came looking for her. Before Volkov's people made their move. The door opened. 3 men, professional, alert, not quite hostile, but definitely not friendly. Eva Volkova, the lead one said. Not a question. Come with us. Where Mr. Volkov would like to speak with you. This was the moment, the point of no return. She could refuse, walk away, abort the mission and go back to Coronado having accomplished nothing except winning a fight. Or she could step through the door and into a world where one mistake would get her killed. Lead the way, she said in Russian. They took her out a back exit to a black Mercedes SUV with tinted windows. She got in the back seat between 2 of the men. The third drove. Nobody spoke. They wound through Budva's streets, heading away from the coast up into the hills. 20 minutes later, they pulled through a gate that looked like it could stop a tank. High walls, cameras everywhere, professional security that made Kira's training scream warnings. The compound was exactly as the satellite photos had shown. Main house overlooking the Bay of Kotor. Support buildings. Gardens that were probably beautiful in daylight. Right now, lit by security lights, they looked like a very expensive prison. They led her inside, through a foyer that belonged in a museum. Down a hallway with art that was probably worth more than Kira would make in her entire military career. To a study with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking dark water. Alexei Volkov stood at those windows, hands behind his back, looking out at nothing. "Leave us," he said without turning around. The three men left. The door closed. Kira was alone with a man who might have killed her father. Volkov turned, studied her with those calculating eyes. "You fight like Russian, but you think like American." "My father was Spetsnaz. Mother was American. I learned from both." "Your footwork, I have seen it before. Military training, American military specifically." He moved closer, not threatening, just observing. "Navy, perhaps, or Marines." Kira kept her face neutral. "I trained with various people, picked up techniques wherever I could." Volkov circled her slowly. "Eva Volkova. You know what I find interesting about that name?" "What?" "It is almost too perfect. Russian father, American mother. Just enough documentation to be credible. But not so much that it would survive serious investigation." Kira's pulse quickened, but she didn't let it show. "I don't know what you mean." "I think you do." Volkov stopped in front of her. "I think you are not who you claim to be. I think perhaps you are intelligence services. CIA. Maybe military." This was it, the moment where everything could fall apart. Where 13 years of training and preparation came down to whether she could sell a lie to a man who'd spent his career detecting them. "You're wrong," she said flatly. "Am I?" Volkov smiled. "Then tell me, Eva Volkova, why do you fight like someone trained by old Soviet methods? Why do your eyes scan for exits and threats even now? Why do you stand like soldier at rest?" Kira made a decision, a calculated risk. "Because my father trained me from childhood. Because he was paranoid and wanted me to be able to defend myself. Because Soviet military training is the best in the world for hand-to-hand combat." She met his eyes. "And because I learned a long time ago that men like you test everyone. Look for weakness. And the moment you find it, you exploit it." Volkov laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his face from dangerous to almost pleasant. "Good answer. Very good answer." He moved to a bar cart, poured 2 glasses of what looked like very expensive vodka, handed her one. "But you still did not answer question. Who are you really?" "I'm someone who can fight. Someone who needs money. Someone who heard you hire people like me." Kira took a sip of the vodka. It burned going down. "That's all you need to know." "Perhaps." Volkov drank his own vodka in one smooth motion. "Or perhaps I need to know more. Perhaps I need to test you further." "Test me how?" "I have business arrangements scheduled in 36 hours. Transaction requiring security. I need someone I can trust to watch my back." His eyes never left hers. "Problem is, I do not trust anyone, especially not someone who appears too conveniently." "Then why are we having this conversation?" "Because you fight like someone I knew once. Move like him. Have same economy of motion. Same precision." Volkov's voice got quieter. "He was American military, Navy SEAL, call sign Phantom." Kira's world stopped. "I worked with him," Volkov continued, "years ago. Before everything went wrong. Before—" He trailed off. "You remind me of him. Makes me curious. Makes me wonder who you really are." Every instinct screamed at Kira to keep lying. Maintain cover, but she was looking into the eyes of a man who'd known her father, who'd worked with him, who might have betrayed him, and she made another calculated decision. "Garrett Thorne was my father." The silence stretched out for 10 full seconds. Volkov set down his glass very carefully. "You are his daughter." "Yes. You are here because you think I betrayed him. You think I sold information to Taliban that got him killed." "Did you?" Well, Volkov looked at her for a long moment. Then he moved back to the window, staring out at the dark water. "August 2011. I provided intelligence to my CIA handler about Taliban commander. High-value target. Your father's team was sent to capture him." His voice was flat, emotionless. "But I also learned Taliban knew SEALs were coming. They prepared ambush. I sent warning to my handler. Urgent, immediate. Told him operation was compromised." He turned back to face her. "Your father died because that warning was never passed along. CIA handler decided intelligence was too valuable to risk by aborting mission. So he let SEALs walk into kill zone. Kira felt like the floor was falling away beneath her. Who was your handler? Man named Sterling Blackwood. The same man who'd briefed her at Coronado. The same man who'd sent her here. The same man who knew exactly who she was and what this mission meant to her. He let my father die, Kira said quietly. He let 5 good men die to protect his intelligence network. Volkov's voice was bitter, and when I protested, when I threatened to go public, he cut me loose, burned me as asset, made sure I could never work with the American intelligence again. So you became an arms dealer. I became survivor. I used skills and contacts I had to build new life. He looked at her directly. But I never forgot, never forgave. Your father was good man. He did not deserve to die for CIA politics. Kira's mind was racing, processing. Everything she'd believed about her father's death was wrong. Everything Blackwood had told her was a lie. He hadn't sent her here to find plutonium. He'd sent her here to eliminate the one witness who could expose his betrayal, and she'd walked right into it. The plutonium, she said, is it real? Very real and very dangerous. But transaction is not what Blackwood told you. Volkov moved to his desk, pulled out a file, handed it to her. Blackwood arranged entire thing. He is selling plutonium to terrorists. Plans to blame me. Eliminate loose ends. Kira opened the file, saw satellite photos, communications intercepts, financial transactions, all pointing to Blackwood as the source of the plutonium, all showing his coordination with terrorist networks, all proving he was the traitor. Why are you showing me this? Because you are Garrett Thorne's daughter, because you deserve truth, and because I need help stopping Blackwood before plutonium reaches its buyers. Volkov's voice was hard. Transaction is scheduled for dawn tomorrow. Submarine pen 12 kilometers north of here. Soviet-era facility carved into cliff. Blackwood has mercenary team en route to eliminate both of us and secure plutonium. How do you know? Because I pay attention, because I have sources, because I have been expecting something like this since I learned Blackwood was involved in operation. He looked at her. So now you must choose Kira Thorne. You can believe CIA officer who let your father die, or you can believe former Russian intelligence officer who tried to save him. Your decision. Kira stood there holding a file that changed everything, looking at a man who should have been her enemy, but might be her only ally. In her ear, Hawkins' voice crackled. Thorne, your vitals are spiking. What's happening? She couldn't answer without blowing operational security, couldn't explain that everything they'd been told was a lie, that the real enemy wasn't Volkov, that they were all pawns in Blackwood's game. I need to contact my team, she said to Volkov. No direct calls. Blackwood monitors everything, but I can get encrypted message to your handler through back channel. Tell him to move your grandfather to secondary safe location. When mercenaries hit this compound, they will sweep entire area. Kira nodded. Volkov made a call in rapid Russian, gave coordinates. 2 minutes later, her backup comm device buzzed with Declan's confirmation. Moving, stay alive, Firefly. What do you need me to do? She asked Volkov. I need you to help me survive next 4 hours. Then I need you to help me stop worst terrorist attack since 9/11. He moved to a wall safe, began entering a combination. And then if we both live, I need you to help me expose man who killed your father. The safe opened. Inside were weapons, communications equipment, and a data drive that probably contained enough intelligence to bring down a dozen CIA operations. How long until they attack? She asked. 2 hours, maybe 3. Volkov handed her an HK-416 rifle. Can you shoot? Kira smiled without humor. My grandfather was sniper in Korea. My father was SEAL Team 6. What do you think? I think Garrett Thorne would be very proud of his daughter. Volkov loaded his own rifle with practiced efficiency. Now let us see if we can both survive long enough for that to matter. The attack came at 3 in the morning. 18 mercenaries, professional, coordinated. They came over the walls in 3 teams using suppressed weapons and night vision, moving like men who'd done this 1,000 times before. They weren't expecting resistance. Kira was positioned in the main house second floor with clear fields of fire across the compound's courtyard. Volkov had placed his 6 security personnel, all former military, all loyal in defensive positions that would force the attackers into kill zones. It wasn't enough. 18 against 7 was bad odds, even with defensive advantage. The first mercenary team breached the eastern wall and moved toward the guest quarters. Kira tracked them through her rifle scope. Center mass. Breathe between heartbeats, the way Declan had taught her. She dropped 3 before they realized someone was shooting. The suppressor on her HK-416 made noise but not enough to pinpoint her position immediately. By the time they figured it out, Volkov's people were engaging from other positions. The courtyard turned into a shooting gallery, but the mercenaries were good. They adapted fast, returned fire, started systematically suppressing each defensive position. And more were coming over the walls. This wasn't a raid. This was an assault designed to overwhelm through sheer numbers. "We cannot hold," Volkov said over their tactical radio. "We need to fall back to bunker." What bunker? Cold War era. This compound was used by Yugoslav intelligence. Has hardened shelter beneath main house. "We can hold there until your people arrive." Kira fired 3 more shots. 2 hits. Targets down. Then movement on her left made her spin. A mercenary had made it inside the house. Was raising his weapon. Kira's training took over. She dropped the rifle, drew her Glock 19, and put 2 rounds center mass before he could fire. The man went down, but more were coming. She could hear them breaching downstairs. Could hear the firefight outside intensifying. Could hear Volkov's people dying one by one. "Kira," Volkov's voice on the radio. "Bunker now." She ran, down a hallway, through a bedroom, to what looked like a normal closet but had a hidden panel that opened to reveal steel stairs descending into darkness. She plunged down. Behind her, explosions rocked the house. Grenades. They were going to bring the whole structure down rather than clear it room by room. The bunker was exactly as described. Soviet-era construction, reinforced concrete, air filtration, enough supplies to survive a siege. Volkov was already there, bleeding from a shoulder wound sealing the blast door. "Your people?" Kira asked. "Dead, all of them." His voice was flat. "We are alone." The blast door sealed with a hydraulic hiss. They were trapped, safe for now, but trapped. And somewhere above them, 18 mercenaries were probably regrouping, planning how to breach a Cold War bunker. "How long can we hold?" Kira asked. "Bunker has independent air supply for 72 hours. Food, water, weapons." Volkov was applying field dressing to his shoulder. "But they will not wait 72 hours. They will use demolitions. Tunnel in, something." "What about the plutonium, the submarine pen?" Volkov checked his watch. "Transaction scheduled for dawn, 3 hours from now. If we are trapped here, we cannot stop it." Kira's mind raced. They were pinned down, outnumbered. Running out of time. Everything she'd been trained for, everything she'd prepared for came down to this moment. And then she heard it. Faint, distant, but unmistakable. Rifle fire. Not from above. From outside the compound. Different caliber, different rhythm. Single shots, precise, methodical. "Someone is engaging the mercenaries," Volkov said, listening. Kira knew that shooting pattern, had heard it 10,000 times on training ranges, on hunting trips, in demonstrations of skill that bordered on supernatural. "Grandpa," she whispered. Outside the compound in the darkness, a 92-year-old man with a Korean War-era M40 sniper rifle was systematically destroying a mercenary team. 7 shots, 7 targets down. The kind of shooting that should have been impossible for someone his age. But Declan Thorne had never let age define what was possible. The mercenaries panicked. Caught between an unknown sniper and a hardened bunker, they did what cornered predators always do. They made mistakes. 2 more fell to Declan's rifle. 3 tried to flank his position and ran straight into Hawkins, who'd apparently decided supporting Kira was more important than following orders. The firefight lasted another 10 minutes. Then silence. Kira's encrypted backup phone buzzed. A message in Declan's handwriting. "Shorthand, area secure. Time to move." She showed it to Volkov. He stared at it for a long moment. "Your grandfather just killed 9 men at age 92. He's had practice." They unsealed the bunker and emerged into a compound that looked like a war zone. Bodies, damage, the smell of gunpowder and death. But the immediate threat was neutralized. Hawkins appeared in the doorway, rifle up, scanning for threats. He looked at Kira, then at Volkov, then back at Kira. "This better be good," he said. "Blackwood is the traitor," Kira said. "He's selling the plutonium." He sent us here to die. Hawkins' expression didn't change. Proof Volkov handed him the data drive. Everything you need, communications, financial records, operational plans. Hawkins looked at the drive like it was a live grenade. If this is real, then we have 2.5 hours to stop the biggest terrorist attack since 9/11, Kira finished. And we're wasting time. A vehicle pulled up outside. Declan's battered rental car. The old man got out, moving stiffly, carrying his rifle like it was part of his body. He looked at the compound, at the bodies, at his granddaughter standing next to a Russian arms dealer. Firefly, he said calmly, please tell me you have a plan. Working on it, Kira said. How much ammunition do you have left? Enough. Declan's weathered gaze moved to Volkov. You must be the man who tried to save my son. I am sorry I failed, Volkov said quietly. You tried. That's more than some people did. Declan's attention shifted to Hawkins. What's the tactical situation? Submarine pen 12 kilometers north. Dawn transaction in 150 minutes. Unknown number of hostiles. Plus Blackwood coordinating everything from the location. Hawkins' voice was professional, detached. We're looking at impossible odds with no backup and no support. So Tuesday, Declan said. Kira, what do you need? She looked at her grandfather, at Hawkins, at Volkov. 4 people against an organization that had already killed 6 and tried to kill them all. The smart move was to abort. Call for backup. Let the professionals handle it. Wait for the quick reaction force that was supposedly 45 minutes away. But in 45 minutes, the plutonium would be gone. Blackwood would have won, and her father's death would remain unavenged. We need to get to that submarine pen, Kira said. We need to stop the transaction. And we need to capture Blackwood alive so he can face justice for what he did. That is suicide, Volkov said. Probably, Kira agreed, but it's also the mission. So here's what we're going to do. She outlined a plan that was equal parts desperation and tactical brilliance. Underwater approach for her and Hawkins. Declan and sniper overwatch from the cliffs above. Volkov creating a diversion with what remained of his resources, 2 loyal men who'd been off-site during the attack. When she finished, Hawkins was nodding slowly. It could work. It will work, Declan said, because it has to. Volkov looked at all of them. You are all insane. Welcome to the family, Kira said. Now let's go stop a terrorist attack. They loaded into 2 vehicles, Kira and Hawkins in one, Declan and Volkov in the other, racing through pre-dawn darkness toward a submarine pen that held enough plutonium to level a city. The coastal road wound through cliffs and darkness. Kira drove Hawkins beside her, checking weapons and equipment. In the back seat were their diving rigs, military-grade rebreathers that would let them approach underwater without leaving a bubble trail. Your grandfather, Hawkins said quietly. 9 confirmed kills tonight, at 92. He's been doing this since before my father was born. And Volkov, you really think we can trust him? I think a man who tried to save my father wouldn't lie about how he died. Kira took a curve too fast, tires squealing. And I think Blackwood has been playing us all from the start. If you're wrong, then we die. But if I'm right and we do nothing, thousands of people die. She glanced at him. I can live with the first option, can't live with the second. Hawkins was quiet for a moment. Then, Phantom would be proud of you. He'd think I was reckless and stupid. That too, but proud. The submarine pen appeared as a dark slash in the cliff face, barely visible against the rocks. Soviet-era construction, built to hide Kilo-class submarines from American surveillance during the Cold War. Now it was hiding something far more dangerous. They parked a kilometer away. Declan and Volkov took the high ground, a promontory 800 yards from the pen entrance with clear sightlines. Kira and Hawkins geared up for the underwater approach. Radio check, Declan's voice came through. Firefly, you copy. Copy, Grandpa. You in position. Affirmative, I count 12 hostiles visible, probably more inside. Submarine is Kilo-class diesel-electric. Engines are running. They're preparing to depart. How long? 30 minutes, maybe less. Kira looked at Hawkins. They had 30 minutes to infiltrate a heavily guarded Soviet submarine pen, secure weapons-grade plutonium, and capture or kill a rogue CIA officer. Just another Tuesday. They entered the water. Cold, dark. The kind of dark where you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. But SEALs train for this. Learn to navigate by feel and memory in instruments that glowed faintly in the blackness. The swim took 12 minutes. 12 minutes of controlled breathing and steady fin kicks and the constant awareness that one mistake would mean drowning in the Adriatic. But SEALs didn't make mistakes, not the ones who survived. They surfaced inside the pen. The cavern was exactly as the intelligence photos had shown, 200 meters deep, high ceiling carved from living rock. And in the center, a Kilo-class submarine with men loading metal containers aboard, plutonium containers. Kira and Hawkins slipped out of their dive gear, moved through the shadows. The pen had catwalks and maintenance platforms left over from Soviet times. They climbed, silent, invisible. From their elevated position, Kira could see everything. 15 men, professional security. And standing on the submarine's deck directing operations was Sterling Blackwood himself. He looked different than he had in the briefing room at Coronado. Same expensive suit, same forgettable face. But here in his element, the Predator showed through. This was a man who'd sacrifice 5 SEALs to protect his assets. A man who'd sell plutonium to terrorists if the price was right. Kira's finger tightened on her trigger. One shot, she could end this right now. Put a bullet in Blackwood's brain and call it justice for her father. But that wasn't the mission. The mission was evidence, exposure, making sure the world knew what he'd done. Positions, she whispered into her radio. Set, Hawkins replied. He was 30 yards to her right, covering different angles. Set, Declan said from outside. Wind 3 knots northwest. Temperature 58 degrees. I have clear shot on 6 targets. Volkov. Ready to make noise, the Russian said. On your word. Kira took a breath. Let it out slowly. This was the moment. The point where everything either worked or fell apart spectacularly. Execute, she said. Outside, Volkov's diversion began. Explosions at the tunnel entrance. Gunfire. Shouting in Russian. It sounded like a full assault. Half of Blackwood's security team rushed toward the tunnel, and Declan started shooting. The first man dropped. Clean headshot. 800 yards in darkness, with iron sights and a rifle older than most of the people in the pen. The second man went down 3 seconds later. Then the third. Blackwood's remaining security scattered, looked for cover, tried to figure out where the shots were coming from. That's when Kira opened fire. Her first shot took a guard on the submarine deck. Center mass. He dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Her second shot hit a man trying to cast off the mooring lines. Her third hit someone running for an alarm panel. Hawkins was shooting too. Methodical, precise. The kind of shooting that came from 13 years in the teams and countless hours on the range. Within 90 seconds, 8 of Blackwood's 15-man security team were down. The rest were pinned confused, trying to return fire at enemies they couldn't see. Blackwood dove for cover behind a plutonium container. Smart. Kira couldn't shoot him without risking the radioactive material. Thorne, Hawkins said, we need to move. They're adapting. He was right. The remaining security was getting organized, laying down suppressing fire. One of them had spotted Hawkins' muzzle flash and was directing fire at his position. Kira moved, down from the catwalk, through maintenance passages that hadn't seen use in 30 years, toward the submarine, toward Blackwood. Behind her, she heard Hawkins engage someone in close combat, the sound of a struggle, then silence. She hoped it was the right kind of silence. She emerged on the submarine deck, 3 guards between her and Blackwood. They saw her at the same time she saw them. Training took over. Muscle memory from 10,000 hours of drills. She put down the first guard with 2 shots before he could bring his weapon to bear. The second one got a shot off. Missed. Her return fire didn't. The third guard was smarter. Used cover. Fired in controlled bursts. Professional. But Kira was SEAL Team 3. And she'd spent her entire life preparing for moments like this. She flanked him. Used the submarine's conning tower as concealment. Came up on his blind side. 2 shots. Center mass. He went down. And then she was face to face with Sterling Blackwood. He had his pistol out. Aimed at her. They stood there 10 feet apart, both with weapons raised, neither willing to fire first. Kira Thorne, Blackwood said. Man. His voice was calm conversational, like they were discussing the weather. I have to admit I'm impressed. I expected you to die at Volkov's compound. Sorry to disappoint. Not disappointing, surprising. There's a difference. He smiled. Not friendly, just acknowledgement of a worthy opponent. But this is where it ends. You're good, but I'm better, and I have nothing to lose. You let my father die, Kira said. Her voice was steady, cold. August 2011. Volkov sent you a warning. You ignored it. I made a tactical decision. 5 SEALs versus an intelligence network worth billions. The math was simple. 5 men, 5 fathers, 5 husbands, 5 sons. They had names, they had families. They trusted you to protect them. They were soldiers. They knew the risks. Blackwood's aim never wavered. Your father included. He would have made the same choice if positions were reversed. You're wrong. Kira could feel tears on her face, but her hands were steady. My father would never sacrifice his men for politics. Then your father was a fool, and look where it got him. Dead on an Afghan hillside while I'm about to walk away with $50 million and enough plutonium to reshape the geopolitical landscape. You're not walking away. Really, because from where I'm standing, you have 2 choices. Shoot me and risk hitting the plutonium behind me, or don't shoot me and watch me kill you. Movement behind Blackwood. Hawkins, wounded, bleeding from his shoulder, but alive and armed. Kira met Blackwood's eyes. Actually, I have a third choice. She dropped. Hawkins fired. The bullet caught Blackwood in his shooting shoulder. His pistol clattered to the deck. He stumbled back against the plutonium container. Alive but disarmed, Kira was on him in seconds, kicked his pistol away, put her knee on his neck, cuffed him with flex ties. He was done. Target secure, she said into her radio. Hawkins is wounded, Blackwood in custody, plutonium contained. Copy, Declan said. I count 0 active hostiles outside. Volkov is moving to your position. Kira sat back, let herself breathe. It was over. They'd done it. Against impossible odds. Against a traitor with resources and training and experience. They'd won. Hawkins slumped against the submarine. His shoulder was bleeding badly, but he was grinning. Not bad for a diversity hire. Shut up and let me look at that wound. She was applying pressure to his shoulder when the radio crackled. Declan's voice. Urgent. Kira, contacts inbound, 4 vehicles, 20+ hostiles, mercenary backup team, ETA 3 minutes. Kira's blood ran cold. 20 more mercenaries. They were wounded, low on ammunition, trapped in a submarine pen with no escape route. Grandpa, I can slow them, can't stop them. Not at this range. Not alone. Declan's voice was calm, matter of fact. But I can buy you time. We extract together. All of us. Negative Firefly. Submarine pen has 1 entrance. They come through that tunnel, they have you trapped. But if someone holds them at the entrance, he trailed off. Let her understand what he was saying. No. Kira, listen to me. I'm 92 years old, lived longer than any Thorn has right to expect. But you're just getting started. His voice was gentle, loving, the way it had been when she was 6 and he was teaching her to shoot. This is what we train for, to stand between our people and danger, to make the hard choice, to make it count. Through her scope, she could see him, alone at the tunnel entrance, setting up his rifle with the same methodical precision she'd watched 10,000 times, taking his position. I love you, Grandpa. I know, Firefly. Now finish the mission. Stop Blackwood. Make them remember that thorns don't break. We just reload. His voice changed, became the voice of command she'd grown up hearing. That's an order, Lieutenant. The first mercenary vehicle appeared in his scope. Declan fired. The driver slumped. The vehicle careened into the tunnel wall. Blocked the entrance, but more were coming, dismounting, taking cover, returning fire. Go, Declan said, and opened fire in earnest. Volkov appeared at the pen entrance, his 2 remaining men with him. I have boat, hidden dock on north side. We can get out. Kira looked at the tunnel entrance, at her grandfather making his last stand, at 92 years old buying time with his life. Move, she said. Her voice was dead, empty. Everyone move, now. They got Hawkins to his feet, grabbed the evidence, left the plutonium it was too heavy to carry. Quick reaction force could secure it. They ran for Volkov's boat. Behind them they could hear Declan's rifle. Single shots. Precise. Methodical. The sound of a man who'd been shooting since 1950 and had never forgotten how. The boat's engine roared to life. They pulled away from the pen. Dawn was breaking over the Adriatic. Beautiful and terrible. The rifle fire stopped. Kira stood in the boat looking back at the cliffs, waiting for some sign, some sound, anything. Nothing. Just silence. She'd lost her father in Afghanistan. Now she'd lost her grandfather in Montenegro. 2 generations of warriors. Gone. But their mission was complete. Blackwood was in custody. The plutonium was secured. The truth would come out. They'd won. It just didn't feel like winning. 3 days later, Arlington National Cemetery held a ceremony under gray skies that threatened rain. 2 ceremonies technically. One for each Thorn. Master Chief Garrett Phantom Thorn, killed in action August 2011. Betrayed by the intelligence apparatus he had trusted. Finally recognized as the hero he'd been. Colonel Declan Flint Thorn, killed in action December 2024. 92 years old. 107 confirmed kills across 3 wars. The oldest combat casualty in American military history. The investigation into Sterling Blackwood had been swift and brutal. The evidence on Volkov's data drive was ironclad. Communications, financial transactions, operational plans, all of it proving that Blackwood had been running his own operation for years, selling intelligence, trafficking weapons, and finally attempting to sell weapons-grade plutonium to terrorists. He would spend the rest of his life in Leavenworth. No trial, no publicity, just a quiet conviction in a military court and a cell that would be his home until he died. Alexei Volkov had been granted asylum in exchange for testimony. His intelligence on Blackwood's network had dismantled a dozen other operations. He'd been given a new identity somewhere in America. Kira would probably never see him again. But she'd received a letter, handwritten, in Russian. Your father was good man. Your grandfather was better. You are best of both. Make them proud, Kira Thorn. You already have. Kira stood at attention as they folded the flags. One for her father, one for her grandfather. The cemetery was full. SEALs, Marines, Rangers, Delta. And in the front row, Bryce Hawkins, arm in a sling, jaw still slightly swollen from where she'd knocked him out. He caught her eye, nodded once. Respect between warriors. When it was over, when the crowd had dispersed, Kira stood alone at the graves. 2 fresh headstones. 2 men who'd defined her life. Admiral Hayes approached. Lieutenant Commander Thorn. She turned. Sir, your promotion came through and your new assignment, SEAL Team 6, your father's old unit. He handed her a folder. Congratulations. Thank you, sir. You earned it, not because you're a woman, not because of politics or publicity, because you completed an impossible mission and brought down a traitor. Hayes looked at the graves. Your father and grandfather would be proud. I know, sir. He left. Kira stood there a moment longer, then she pulled out the Korean War medal Declan had given her, the one her father had carried, the one 3 generations of Thorns had kept safe. She placed it on Declan's grave. You said to make it count, Grandpa. I will. Every day. I promise. 6 months later, Kira stood on the firing range at Coronado training the latest batch of BUDS candidates. 3 women in the class, all of them scared, all of them determined. One of them was struggling with the Barrett M82, long-range shooting, the kind of precision work that separated good shooters from great ones. Commander, the candidate said, I can't hit the target, it's too far. Kira walked over, looked at the setup, made a few adjustments. My grandfather hit targets at this range with iron sights in Kentucky windage. You have computer-calculated ballistics in a $10,000 rifle. What's your excuse? I don't have one, ma'am. Correct. Now watch. Kira settled behind the rifle. 1,400 yards. Moving target, wind, all the variables that made shooting more art than science. She thought about Declan, about those ice-blue eyes tracking targets across Korean hillsides, about his hands teaching her to breathe, to calculate, to make every shot count. She fired. 3 seconds later, the target bell rang. Dead center. The candidate stared. Your turn, Kira said, handing the rifle to the struggling candidate. You belong here, not because someone gave you permission. You belong here because you'll do whatever it takes to hit that target. Now show me. The candidate set up, followed Kira's coaching. Fired. 1,400 yards out, the target bell rang. Not center, but solid hit. The candidate's face transformed. Pure joy, pure disbelief, pure determination to do it again. Kira smiled. First genuine smile since Montenegro. Again, she said, and this time aim for the center. That night, alone in her quarters, Kira looked at the photo on her desk. 3 generations. Her great-great-grandfather in Civil War blues, her great-grandfather in World War II khakis, her grandfather in Korean War utilities, her father in desert camo, and now her. SEAL Team 6, Lieutenant Commander Kira Thorne, the first woman, but not the last, because she'd proven something in Montenegro. Not that women could be SEALs. That was never in question. She'd proven that belonging wasn't about gender or size or what people expected. Belonging was about competence, about courage, about being willing to stand between danger and the people you loved, about making hard choices and living with the consequences. Her phone buzzed. Message from Hawkins, Team 6 briefing tomorrow, 0600, first mission. You ready? She typed back always, because that's what Thorns did. They showed up. They did the job. They made it count every single day until the last shot was fired and the last target fell. And even then they reloaded.